Let's now talk about Tatsuya Imai. Aram, I'm just going to give the floor to you. You've been diving into the video. What are you seeing? What can this guy bring to a team at the top of a rotation, at the middle of a rotation? How are you projecting him coming up in this upcoming season?
This is another one where I'm going to have my published report, I think, out on that on justbaseball.com next week. He is really difficult to figure out as well, because Imai cut his walk rate in half last year. His career walk rate was around, I think, like 12% or 11%. And he was down to, I believe, around 7% last year. So nearly cut it in half. I think it was north of 12% in his career. He's steadily been cutting it down. He lowered his arm angle, which I actually think has made him more effective and made the fastball more effective. But there's so many things that make him really difficult to assess. It's almost like if he was intentionally trying to make it hard to scout him. So Exhibit A, he apparently added a sinker. And that's what Jeff Passan said. I have access to, again, like 90% of the pitches he threw. I don't see any sinkers. I see fastballs that sometimes have a little bit more horizontal than vertical, but like they're still right at the dead zone, and then a little bit more vertical than horizontal. They're all labeled as four seamers, so they conflate, and it just makes it a dead zone average shape. But it's like, when was that intentionally supposed to be a sinker? When was that not? I don't know. There's not like a clear-cut sinker. The other is he averaged 95 on the fastball, but I looked at it by velo bucket. He threw plenty of fastballs at 90 to 92 miles per hour, and he threw fastballs at 99 to 100 miles per hour. He does whatever the hell he wants out there. Like he will go out there and just lay some in, and then he will let it rip. Like his average fastball velocity with runners on base, I think with runners in scoring position, jumps by a full mile per hour. He's just a wild card. And when you watch him pitch, like you got to see it. I love the way that he plays out there and his energy. I think lowering that arm angle became a much more natural throw for him, and that's why I think the command improvements are somewhat sustainable. But here's another thing. Yes, he cut the walk rate down. I watched almost every single start. I have a few more that I need to watch before I finish the piece. He will get back in the zone, but he will mix in like some just completely non-competitive pitches. Like there'll be a fastball that's just never out of prayer, and then a slider that never had a prayer, and then the next one's right on the black. So it's effectively wild, but in Major League Baseball, you can't give away count leverage, right? You can't 1-1 count, and you just throw a pitch that doesn't even make the hitter think. Now you just skew the odds right back into his favor pretty significantly. You think about 1-2 versus 2-1. And if you do that a lot, it's going to stack up against you. And there's just too many of those from him. So he just becomes another pitcher where it's like, okay, well, are they just going to tell him to stop throwing like sandbagging fastballs at 90? How often can he sustain the upper echelon? I looked at velocity trends by pitch totals. So like he holds his fastball velocity better than the big league average through his first 50 pitches, but then through his final 20 pitches, generally. So I would say through his first 60, he holds it better. Through his final 20 to 30 pitches, he disproportionately falls off and actually sees his velo drop more than the big league average. Is that because he gets even more strategic with when he lets it loose? Or is he not holding the velo as long? So there's so many things that I do not totally know. The other thing that makes it really crazy is he has the wrong way slider, that Treya Savage slider. We saw it work really well for Treya Savage, so that's encouraging. He also throws a couple different changeups that all these Japanese pitchers do, and it makes it so hard to evaluate. All that said, that arm angle is going to make the fastball effective. I don't think it's going to be elite, but I think it's going to be good. I've seen Lance Brzezowski mention Luis Castillo. I also saw some similarities to, Luis Ortiz. Unfortunately,
just to interject here, I know Saras compared it to Joe Ryan's fastball as far as arm angle and everything else, but I'm not sure.
I think Ryan's even more funky. Like that would, if it was like that, I think it would be Joe Ryan's fastball if you're assuming that he's not going to lose any vert. But every single pitcher, when they come over, loses about an inch or two of vert and about an inch or two of horizontal because the ball is just bigger. So I think it's going to play a little bit more like Castillo's, but that is a good point. And I mean, he knows his stuff, obviously. So if it does play like that, then you're seeing more of the ceiling. That wrong way slider, I think, is going to play well. And I think teams can work with him because I think when it breaks glove side, it's even more disgusting. But the wrong way action, like it's also creates some really weird looks. And then he started throwing this change up a little bit more at the end of the year that looked really good for me. I don't know if it was a kick change or whatever it was, but it looks more effective. So it's, I think, ultimately just going to come down to execution. What makes Joe Ryan's fastball so good, yes, it's weird, but he executes the heck out of it. And that's where I'm not 100% sure how well Imai is going to execute, but it's definitely going to be better than we saw in the past.
I also think from what we have heard out of him so far, which still isn't much, he's saying all the right things to get whatever team that signs him really excited with the fan base, because he's out there saying, I want to beat the Dodgers. I don't want to join the Dodgers. And he's talked about how he wasn't getting challenged in the NPB. And he said, too often, like nobody was, it wasn't that power versus power matchup he's looking forward to in the big leagues, where in the NPB, guys were just trying to work his pitch count to get him out of the game. So I think there certainly appears to be a competitive edge. And even just watching the little highlights that we throw on the screen, I think you can kind of see it. It seems like this guy has a chance to have that extra little star power that is going to make you feel a little bit more comfortable investing what it's going to take to sign the guy.
Yeah, and it was funny because I remember like Roki being like, "Oh, it's wide open, right?" I'm looking everywhere, but I do believe him. It was a little bit more than people believe it was, but I love all the things that he's saying, and I think it's refreshing because I understand like wanting to follow a similar path, but it's cool to see guys wanting to create their own path, and I think he's got the moxie to do it. He's got the energy on the mound to do it, and he's clearly fearless. I think he's athletic. I like the way he moves on the mound. I think it's a really good chance he's going to be a middle rotation arm, but there's going to be that first year where even with Yamamoto, there was a little bit of it became really, really good. But even from a stuff perspective, I'm like, I know his stuff's better than that. And then we really saw it fully become the stuff that it is. I think with Imai, he's been already just changing himself, like and learning himself, and made that arm angle adjustment, made these different changes. And then he's going to have the other variable of just being in Major League Baseball. I think the first year is going to be ups and downs. And I think it's going to cumulatively come out to he's going to be able to eat innings for you. And look, if he's a low fours guy in the first year, it wouldn't shock me. If he was better than that, well, definitely wouldn't shock me. He's super talented. I do really like the Luis Castillo, like last year comp for how he could break in on the higher end. But there's a world where just as he gets more comfortable and starts executing the fastball better and all those things, like that slider is very unique. There's not a lot of examples of sliders like that. Multiple change-ups and the unique look from him. He could be a really fun arm. And, it's with the velocity where it's at, and maybe he has a little bit more in there. He was maybe just kind of coasting at times. I know he had heat stroke at one point in the middle of last season, and I think he wasn't quite as effective after that. So, I think that's something worth noting too. So you think about all these different things, or there could be more in there. He's still just 27 on opening day. And that's why I think I would feel comfortable giving Imai a longer term deal, because I know even if it doesn't happen immediately, he's going to get better and the floor is higher, where he's at worst, I think he's a back end of the rotation arm, because he's not as one dimensional as like a Kodai Senga or something like that.
So what's interesting as we kind of transition and look at the contract, he's sitting in a very advantageous part of this market, because like I mentioned earlier in the show, every single top free agent starting pitcher for the most part has a qualifying offer attached outside of Merrill Kelly. He does not have a qualifying offer. There's a posting fee, but doesn't have a qualifying offer attached. So when I try to project the contract, you had to factor in the posting fee and try to put that all together. I came to 6 years, 114 million, which would be 19 million per. You add the posting fee, it's 18.975 million. So you're adding on about another $20 million in the total commitment. I also think Scott Boras' client, this one I'm sure about, because he said that teams are going to go Imai, oh my, or whatever the pun was at the GM meetings. But I think he gets an opt-out where he's able to hit the market going into his age 31 season maybe. But I think he gets 6 years, and I think he gets close to 20 million per.
I honestly think he could get more. I know you've been nailing these predictions, so I'm not gonna dig in too hard here. I think he could get more because of everything you said, right? Like a 27-year-old free agent in a market where you just don't get that opportunity too much, and you usually have the pick attached. The posting fee does create that hurdle, but it's funny. Like obviously, it's dependent on team situation. But if you ask me, like I got to give 140 million to Imai or Murakami, I'm giving it to Imai just because I'll sleep more soundly. Again, if I miss out and Murakami is Schwarber, fine. But like if I was in our position in the media, like especially when I'm doing player analysis, I don't know is not really acceptable. Inside of a team front office, it is acceptable. And I would just literally say, I don't know with Murakami. With Imai, there's aspects I don't know. And I think that's what makes him really difficult to fully figure out. But I just look at his ability on the mound and the field to spin that slider. Like he's a really unique thrower in general, and the progress that he's made year over year, and just the unique aspects to what he can do on the mound and his age. And I'm like, even if it's a little bit of an overpay, it'll be like the Barrios thing, right? Where it's like, yeah, maybe I'd rather allocate that money elsewhere, but that contract's not that bad. And I think that's where it would be on the lower end with Imai. And I think teams, that's where I think a lot of teams are going to feel that way. And I think that may drive the bidding up.
So I'm trying to actually pull up the writing that I did to explain exactly how it came to that contract prediction a little bit further. But essentially what it came down to is if you look at the guys that came over, Yamamoto is the outlier. This would still be like the richest contract ever given out. And if you compare him to Senga and Imanaga, those guys got around 15 million per. So for him to get closer to 19 million per, that is a big uptick. And if you add in the posting fee, you're more looking at an AAV a little over $22 million.
Yeah, no, that's a lot of money.
So that's where I kind of landed on that. But I think the thing that you mentioned, you look at the impact for this season. I think this is the guy that's going to have the biggest impact in 2026. And the market, any team can talk themselves into him being the guy that they should be going all in on right now. Landing spots, I had the Yankees, the Giants, the Mets, the Cubs, the Red Sox. But, I mean, you could open it up further because any team that's in the market that adds starting pitching should be sniffing around here. And if he did kind of open it up saying, I'm not going to go to the Dodgers, it seems like he's going to want to go to a good team probably, but really anybody can get in on this one. So I do think there is a world where he does get the most out of the international guys just because the market could drive the price in a way that on the Murakami side, the market could kind of dry up the price a little bit.
I think if you were in on Cease, they're totally different. But if you were in on Cease, why would you not be in on Imai? And I think a lot of teams were in on Cease, and I think a lot of teams are going to be in on Imai, to your point. So I don't even think there's a clear best fit. It's just, I know the guys were talking about like the Giants, no brainer, I think, for the Giants to lock him up there, and great place to ease in where you can pitch in that ballpark. But any team, he's a great fit because I think in the first year, he probably, my guess, and I a lot of unknown, my guess would be through the adjustments, he settles in as more of like a solid 4 and a good rotation. And then I think by year 2, he's a solid middle rotation arm and giving you flashes of more. And you still have that dream of like at 30 years old, when it all comes together, of him potentially having the upside to push closer to the front end of rotation. Because especially the way that Japanese pitchers can just spawn new pitches and their inherent ability to manipulate the baseball is incredible. That these guys, you never know what they can find and what else can be unlocked. And that's pitchers in general, but especially these Japanese arms, I just marvel at their ability to just manipulate the baseball.
Yeah, I know the learning curve in year 1 can be tough, but I also, from watching Kodai Senga's first season, he did struggle with the baseball in the beginning. But then once he made that adjustment, he was, every single new team that he faced, they were just baffled. Obviously, the Ghost Fork being such a great pitch. Imanaga had a little bit of that too, where his first year he was unbelievable. So I do think there's a world where we're looking back on this signing and be like, man, that was like the steal of the offseason, because first tour through, he might be, really tough for these teams to pick up on. It could actually even be a little bit of the opposite, or once the league adjusts, maybe he's going to have to kind of go through more in year 2 also.
Last thing I'll mention on that point, and that's very possible, what I like, and I liked Imanaga when he was coming over because I thought he was unique. What I like about Imai in that context is that he's not one-dimensional. So with Imanaga, it was, okay, it's this low-release verti fastball that hitters are going to struggle to get to, right? They're going to swing under. With Senga, it's that ghost fork. But that's their calling card, right? Like that's their thing. Whereas with Imai, you've got good fastball that's unique. You've got this very unique slider, and then you've got the change ups and splitters that have come along as well. So if the league does adjust, he can just tweak himself as well. With Imanaga, what are you changing? He is who he is, and it's that fastball splitter. So that's the part that I think works in his favor too.
I think with Imai, we're talking about sort of a middle ground between the veterans of Senga and Imanaga that came over. You have some more youth that you can bet on here in Imai. He's not going to be Yamamoto, so don't expect that crazy high ceiling, but it's somewhere between Yamamoto and Imanaga and Senga that I think teams are going to be really excited about getting a chance on a guy that is kind of standing in a tier of his own in this free agent class, which can only stand to help him as a guy that can be acquired without giving up draft picks and probably can be acquired without having to go to like 30 million a season that it might take to get a Framber.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt.